Well, another 90s comedy sequel that fucking sucks. Good Burger 2. I I was over exaggerating a little bit in the intro there. This movie doesn't really suck. It's just not great. And that's unfortunate. I didn't really expect a great movie. I just expected a fun sequel. And in some ways it was that. But I was really disappointed with how this movie turned out. I think the biggest thing of when you watch this movie, you just realize it's just too late to make a sequel. The way the characters' lives and where they're at, both in the movie and in real life, these actors make it impossible to make a sequel make sense in this current tone and vibe. Because number one, um, they're adults, and the fun of the first movie is that they're high school students. You know, it was, and so like that's kind of the fun energy of that, or at least they're young enough that they could play high school. Maybe if they made a sequel, I think they were seniors in the first one. Could have moved it on to them being in college, and it still would have worked better than this. Now they're fully grown men. Ed has kids, as that's revealed in this movie, which was a funny reveal. I actually enjoyed that reveal. And then Roxanne being the nanny, that was hilarious. But he also owns Good Burger, and he got Dex who's having money problems, and it comes to work at Good Burger again to help out with his money problems, other things going on. So it's kind of like, okay, like I don't get it of a lot of that. I'm like, okay, because it's fun to see those kind of reveals and they're goofy, but I just feel like, man, it's just too late to make a sequel. We're all too old for this. Dex has a daughter that he's estranged from, things like that. It just feels a little awkward, you know what I mean? I still really enjoyed this movie. I had a fun time with it. I think if you like Good Burger, it's at least worth one watch. But there was just some things that I just couldn't get my head around. First of all, there's a reveal in this movie that Ed and Dex haven't been talking for a while, which we kind of expected. That's kind of the whole thing. You expected it to be like a reunion movie with them. But what I don't understand about that reveal is like they never explain why, and maybe that should have been a conflict in the movie. It's like, this is why we spread apart. This is why we don't talk anymore. And that should have been like a conflict in the movie, but it kind of wasn't. And that's the thing about this movie. This movie doesn't really have a conflict. The first movie, it was against Mondo Burger. This movie, it's people trying to convince Ed to sell. Also, it was also about Dex trying to get money to pay off his car damage he did to his teacher's car. It had more of a through line. Yeah, there was some random shit that happened. This movie feels like there is no real plot to this at all, and it doesn't have the same kind of fun energy to it. Unfortunately, there's a lot of dead air in this movie, and I feel like scenes last a little too long. Things aren't put together great. And then the other thing that really bugged me, it's just how cheap this movie feels. It feels so cheap that it's like, ugh, like it's kind of gross how cheap this movie feels. It should not have been this cheap. But I enjoyed this movie fine enough. It's not a terrible movie. I think if you like Good Burger, you should watch this movie.